The Corrupted Blood incident was a month-long virtual plague in World of Warcraft that spread across the entire world of Azeroth in 2005 as a result of a bug. This incident caused a huge uproar in the WoW community, and despite Blizzard's multiple attempts at a hotfix, the bug remained in the game. 20 years have passed since then, and I thought it'd be interesting to revisit this worldwide incident. Welcome to MMO Histories, Corrupted Blood. It was September 13th, 2005, and Blizzard had just released World of Warcraft's 4th major raid, Zul'Gurub. This raid consisted of 20 players and was located in Stranglethorn Valley. The final boss of this raid was Hakkar the Soulflayer. This boss casted a debuff called Corrupted Blood on players, which caused direct damage to the target and everyone around them, as well as applying damage over time. This debuff had a contagious effect, as all surrounding players would also get this debuff transmitted to them if they were close to the target. This debuff lasted 10 seconds or until the players defeated Hakkar, whichever came first. As one might have expected, developers intended to keep the Corrupted Blood debuff within the Zul'Gurub region, but a programming oversight led to its spread over the entire world of Azeroth. This is how it happened. Corrupted Blood didn't only apply to characters, but pets and minions as well. That means hunters' pets and warlock minions would get this debuff as well. However, as a hunter or warlock, you can unsummon your familiars in the middle of combat. And if you unsummoned your familiar while they had the debuff, then that's where the problem arose. See, Blizzard forgot to implement a check to see if the boss had been defeated in the case of resummoning these familiars. So by resummoning, these pets would come back with the debuff, which then could be transmitted to other players in close proximity. Players who defeated Hakkar would fast travel to populated city areas to repair their gear, and when they activated their pets, you can guess the rest. Something to note was that NPCs could also get this debuff, but since they were incapable of dying, they just acted as carriers of the disease for other players. Once this disease spread outside of Zul'Gurub, it quickly became a pandemic in Azeroth. The identity of the first player who started it was never found. Within hours, outbreaks spread to major cities, most notably Orgrimmar and Ironforge. Those who died often respawned in populated areas only to get reinfected. When spread, Corrupted Blood always applied the full duration of the debuff, regardless of the duration remaining on the player who spread it. There was no cure for this debuff, and it inflicted between 250 and 350 points of damage every 2 seconds. For reference, this was enough to kill a max level character in around 30 seconds. Confusion and panic spread, and since the large majority of players at that point hadn't encountered or weren't experienced with the Hakkar encounter, players who attempted to flee while afflicted didn't realize that they may have been unintentionally spreading the disease even further. Hardcore WoW wasn't a thing, so players would respawn but their gear would get damaged with every death, making it quite an annoyance. By the account of a player to the Washington Post, the world chat would explode anytime a city fell. Players kept a close eye on guild and world chat to see where not to go in order to not catch the disease. The in-game environment soon filled with skeletons and corpses of players who had succumbed to the disease, and there were forums describing hundreds of these bodies throughout Azeroth's population centers. This actually led some players to believe that this was an intentional feature, with Hakkar driving the community into a pandemic-based game event. There were measures taken to reduce the spread, but this proved to be ineffective, as the healers would often get contracted as well and die. Only one class in the game, Paladins, were capable of removing the Corrupted Blood debuff, and most of the time the healed player would just immediately get reinfected as soon as they got healed. Less powerful players headed to the edge of town using the in-game chat's yell feature, which is the furthest reaching chat function to warn other players not to enter. Every town had at least one unofficial town crier making announcements about the pandemic to the world's open spaces. Some of the players thought to enact self-quarantine, remaining in less populated areas of Azeroth rather than entering towns or cities. Some players used this pandemic to scam other players, saying that they had an amulet that protected you against the new server event. And of course, there were the griefers. Players who took advantage of the Corrupted Blood pandemic to intentionally spread the disease and cause havoc. One griefer whose guild engaged in this activity mentioned that it was just funny to watch people run around while screaming. To make everything worse in the middle of all of this, internet chat forums often had misinformation concerning this incident, causing even more confusion. Interestingly enough though, there were groups of players who took action to attempt to win against this pandemic. Top guilds would track safe paths through cities to avoid infected NPCs, and you could pay them using in-game currency to heal you through if you needed to visit your class trainer or something. On September 16th, approximately 3 days after the release of Zul'Gurub, a Blizzard staff member mentioned that they were aware of the problem and were working on a fix. Obviously, corrupted blood had spread beyond what was intended, but identifying and fixing the issue that led to this pandemic proved to be difficult. One of their first actions was to institute quarantine zones by placing barriers around heavily infected areas. This wasn't very effective though, as this is the gaming community. Of course people are going to find a way to bypass the barrier, and so they did. Blizzard had two options. The first, to manually check every single animal in the game universe for the corrupted blood debuff. Or second, to write some unmaintainable code that would automatically check for the infection every time a familiar was summoned. They attempted to put a stop to this pandemic by releasing hotfixes, including restarting servers on a rolling basis. Restarting servers on a rolling basis means that not all the servers were restarted at the same time, but rather this occurred in stages, one group of servers after another. However, this also proved to be ineffective as the disease soon re-emerged in restarted areas. After 1 week without a suitable solution, Blizzard performed a hard reset on WoW servers, returning to its state just before the introduction of corrupted blood. And on October 8th, Blizzard released a patch that made familiars immune to this debuff, hard removing the potential of it spreading once more. Despite its crippling effect on the community, player response to the incident was actually quite positive. This event inspired Blizzard to release an intentional plague event later in 2008 in Wrath of the Lich King. On October 22, 2008, a few weeks before the drop of the expansion, several mysterious crates appeared in one town of Azeroth. Players who interacted with these crates got an unknown disease, and if they didn't find a cure within 10 minutes, would transform into a zombie. Unlike the corrupted blood debuff however, this debuff could be cured through healing spells or NPC aid. Blizzard put a stop to this event only a week after, on October 28 though, because they received complaints from players that the zombie infection was detracting from other parts of the game. The corrupted blood incident went down as one of the most notorious events of the game. It gained so much traction in fact that some real-life disease researchers and organizations asked for the data gained from the incident in order to help them with their research on human behavior when confronted with disease outbreaks. This was the story of the corrupted blood incident in WoW. Thank you for watching.